There's some weeks where I'm very excited to see the thumbnails and get into some laughter, but there really just is no laughter to be had on a week like this. But as always, we are here. We're back for another episode of Pony Express Radio. I am, of course, Mr. President, RedHawk himself, welcoming once again to the show, Mr. Pete Quinones. How you doing this week, Pete?
That thumbnail, man.
Yeah, I know, right? Mm, but we'll be getting into that story, and or the I don't know, almost kind of like the lack of any updates. It's just one of those things. We'll be ranting about that shortly. But we've got joining with us tonight, Mitch, a friend from down under. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thanks, guys. Very well. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah. Do you want to give like a brief introduction to our audience, who you are and what you do, and where people can find more of your stuff?
Yeah, well, me personally, I don't really have a lot to say on my own profile. I'm a member of the Australian Natives Association, a fraternal organisation within Australia that really exists for the betterment of its members, for developing skills and capabilities within its members, for building up the infrastructure and support network to help members navigate the difficult times in which we face ourselves, in which we find ourselves, I should say, and as part of that, looking towards building bases of funding and legal support for those who may, find themselves in difficult circumstances. Limitations in access to employment, possibly based on their political views, shall we say. So, yeah, a fraternal organisation, but obviously one with a particular political slant, and advocating for the interests of Australian men, real Australian men, whose interests, unfortunately, have and the promotion of their interests have fallen by the wayside in this age of multiculturalism in which we live. So, yeah, the Australian Natives Association is the name of the organisation, and we have our own website, ausnatives.org. So you can catch us there.
Alrighty. Well, as we'll be discussing throughout tonight, that many of the issues we are facing here in the States are pretty commonplace throughout the rest of the Anglosphere, and we've talked on this show many of times on and off air that Americans have I'd say we have a pretty kindred spirit with our Australian cousins. We have similar histories of taming the wild frontier, going halfway across the world to go found a new place, built a country basically out of nothing, out of the dirt. So I've always felt a kinship with the Australians, and having a fraternal organization for Australian men down there, of course, is going to be very important into the future, and something we agree with over here at the Old Glory Club, of course, as well. So it's nice to see more of these organizations popping up throughout the Anglosphere. But anyway, gentlemen, let us get into the stories for tonight. Well, the first place to start is going to be with this Bondi Beach shooting that occurred last week. So, it seems like Mitch, you'd be the best guy to basically walk us through this one. So, what was the situation? What's like the reaction been on the ground, not just from the Australian population, but also the people in government? Well, I mean, for people in the audience who were not aware of this, so two Pakistani Muslims, I believe, decided to head over to a Hanukkah celebration on Bondi Beach and started open firing with, these bolt-action rifles and shotguns. So extreme weapons of war. I've been told by everyone, right? So I don't know what has been the word on the ground, on the streets, shall we say?
Yeah, so Indian nationals, I believe, yes, links to Pakistan, but I believe travelled recently on an Indian passport to the Philippines, which has become a bit of a hotspot for people looking to train themselves in for these kinds of acts, shall we say. So yeah, I believe an Indian national and his son were the two involved. From what I understand, the cache of weapons that they had that actually obtained legally. So that's a really interesting point because as you guys may be aware, gun control measures in Australia much, much tighter than the US. Since the last major shooting of this kind in Australia, which was all the way back in 1996, there have been other smaller shootings since, but the last sort of mass shooting that was kind of framed as a massacre carried out in public and not on a private property was way back in 1996 in a place called Port Arthur. 35 people were killed there, and as a result, the then conservative government, interestingly enough, introduced these really tough restrictions as part of what was called the National Firearms Agreement. So access to semi-automatic and automatic weapons has become much, much more difficult since then. And in the absence of any kind of events like this in that period, it's something that Australians that most of whom were pretty happy to see these regulations passed. We don't have that gun culture that exists in America. It's something that a lot of Australians have used to, they've almost held it over Americans and sort of gloated about how good our gun
if I may interject here, this has been something that has been held in front of our faces by all of like the left wingers, liberals, CNN, and everything for decades over here at this point. It's like, oh well, Australia instituted all these gun control measures and they didn't have any mass shootings or crime sprees like this like we do in America. Of course, the popular retort for us back then was, well, look at the demographics, but obviously that has changed in both of our countries in a very negative direction in the last couple of years. But yeah, we've been dealing with this for forever, basically. It's like, oh, look, Australia took away all the guns and they have no problems. It's like, well, that doesn't really tell the whole story, right? It's kind of like the same arguments we used to deal with back in the day with socialists who would point to, oh, look at the Nordic countries. They have socialism. That's great. It's like, oh, so you pointed to the countries that are 98% white or it used to be, So, these statistics don't tell the whole story.
No, you're right, and those same people would always conveniently ignore countries like Switzerland that had one of the highest rates of gun ownership in the world and one of the lowest rates of gun crime in the world. So you're right that it's very easy to cherry pick these things and they don't tell the full story. Yes, there had been some mass shootings. That you could say that the rate of mass shootings definitely decreased following the intervention of the National Firearms Agreement, but it was coming from a pretty low base. And yes, demographics, I dare say, would have played a role in that. But this has kind of, shattered that illusion that we were living in this completely safe society purely as a result of the gun restrictions that were brought in 1996. One, there's the fact that these weapons were actually acquired legally. And two, there is the fact that, it's difficult to get accurate numbers, but more conservative estimates say guess something in the range of 260,000 illegal firearms currently in Australia. And I know this is something that people in your camp over in America have said, well, you take away legal guns and it's not really going to achieve anything because illegal weapons are very easily accessible to people who want to get them for the purpose of committing mass shootings. And it hasn't happened yet in Australia. Obviously, it's happened now with legal firearms, but the reality is that if somebody had the intention of committing something like that with an illegal weapon, the capability is there to do it. And so the focus shifts now, and it's been interesting, some of the conversations that I've had with people that have really towed the line on this, on Australia's approach to firearm control, that when the subject of even tighter restrictions is brought up, I'm now hearing people say that's not going to do it, that's not the problem. So there is this shift, at least in some of the conversations I'm having with people that, I wouldn't call them out and out nationalists by any stretch, but they're starting to acknowledge that demographics is playing a role here.
Yeah, indeed. To piggyback off of the statement you were talking about illegal guns, I'm not sure, Mitch, if you're familiar with this story that just came out of the U.S. A couple months ago, but so, of course, the popular gun brand for our inner city gangster crime is the Glock. And Glock now just it actually was threatening of getting sued recently by a number of American cities because they have a switchy that you could put on the back of these Glocks to turn them into fully automatic weapons. Now, of course, they're very easy to obtain. There's endless amounts of videos of people just brandishing these on social media. Of course, the cops never do anything. They never go and arrest these people. And so what does Glock do? Well, they say that, oh, we're going to radically change the design of our gun that we've had for decades at this point to ensure that people can't turn these into fully automatic weapons. And what happened within a week of the new model coming out, they already figured out a way to get around this, and the guns are back to being fully automatic. So, I mean, it's just that there are client groups of leftist regimes all over the entire globe who are just not interested in policing their client groups. So, but they are interested in taking away firearms from people like us, the scary far right-wing white man who is the number one cause of terrorism, according to Joe Biden's administration. So, I mean, do we have to be having these arguments again?
Dude, there was a book that came out years ago that was a really good book up until the end. It was by Trevor Aronson, of course, Trevor Aronson. He wrote a book it was called The Terror Factory, where he talked about how the FBI created all of these terrorist attacks. They'd find some Muslim, radicalize them. They never radicalized them by saying, oh, don't you think that modern music is terrible and girls are wearing their no, it would terrorize them by going, look at how the United States is bombing your home country. And then they'd radicalize them, and then they'd put guns in their hands or teach them how to make bombs, and then they'd arrest them. Well, when you get to the end of that book, he starts talking about how his whole wrap up is how racist it is to target these Muslims when it's the white men who are the ones who are the most prone to terrorism.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you say that, because that sort of taps into some of the cognitive dissonance, I guess, that has emerged in the wake of this shooting. So, well, I might just backtrack a bit if I can, because there are a couple of things that I should say. I should pause and take a moment to acknowledge that we don't want to be too flippant about this. It is a tragedy. It's a terrible thing that's happened. I'm not the ANA is not a Christian organization, but I am a Christian, and many of our members are Christians, and we do need to stop and acknowledge when something like this happens that it is a tragic thing, and not just gloss over that because that's the language of our ideological opponents. It's a terrible thing that's happened. So I do want to stop and acknowledge that. But it is interesting that some of the language that has come out after this, and tapping into to what you were saying there, Pete. Essentially, this is a foreign conflict. This is a foreign conflict that has been imported into Australia. It is, these age-old hostilities between Jews and Muslims has now turned into a violent conflict on one of Australia's most iconic beaches, and now has, even though the victims in this case were all Jewish people, and so based on our definition of what it is to be an Australian, that they are all foreigners. Ultimately, and that is something that could have happened anywhere that there are Jews or Muslims. Ultimately, Australians have now been put in the firing line here for a conflict that has nothing to do with them. But in the wake of this incident, politicians, figures at the front of Jewish organizations, even, I've got a quote here, or not a quote, sorry, a paraphrase from Max Kaiser, who's the executive officer of the Jewish Council of Australia. He's trying to direct focus away from the pro-Palestinian movement that has become very active within Australia, and is saying, it's nothing to do with them, and we don't want to be focusing on them at the expense of turning our attention away from the anti-Semitism of the far right, as though that somehow, to the extent that it exists, played a role in this Indian Muslim shooters worldview. It's crazy.
I would like to say that this is just revisionist history when they do this, because basically what they want to do is they want to blame the Muslims for this. And I mean, I'm sorry, I know my history. This is my wheelhouse. Okay. When you go through the history of the last 1400 years, Muslims and Jews get along really well when they're in countries together. Look how well they got along in my ancestors' country of Spain. When they let the Muslims in, they opened the doors for them, and then they were given free reign. That happened everywhere. It was always the Christians that ended up getting the Jews. Then once they got a little power, they ended up abusing the Christians, and then the Muslims had to step in and go, wait a minute, stop. The Middle East was the only thing I'm pushing back on. Is you're saying that this is ages old. This is only 100 years old. This is only since Israel went, Europeans calling themselves Jews went to Israel, went to Palestine, or whatever you want to fucking call the land. I don't care what it's called. I'm not yelling at you, Mitch. This is me just screaming into the void. They went there and started killing people. Jews and Muslims and Christians were getting along really well until these psychopaths showed up. And now, for the last over 2 years, you can go on a Telegram channel that Israel put up. You can go to any alt kind of social media platform and watch Jews killing civilians on purpose. And they don't expect blowback, which is a CIA term for Muslim terrorism. They don't expect blowback. Anyone who knows me, as much as I talk about Jewish power, all these things, I don't want them hurt. I don't want anyone hurt. I don't want to see anyone die. But this is what happens always. On the September 11th, it was Americans, and yes, some Jews got killed in that, but it was mostly Americans who died because Jews want to blow shit up all over, just want to do whatever they want, kill whoever they want, take whatever they want all over the Middle East. And now when a couple people, who knows, maybe these guys saw what was happening in Gaza for the last 2 years and decided, well, I'm going to make Jews pay. Wow. Doesn't that sound like what Israeli Jews were saying? Well, if you don't want all these kids, friggin' incinerated, if you don't want all these old ladies incinerated, maybe you shouldn't have attacked. Maybe October 7th shouldn't have happened. Well, if you're going to keep fucking incinerating kids, maybe this is going to keep happening. I don't know. There could be a correlation, or maybe these guys are just crazy. I don't think so, because historically, that's not why they do it, because they're out of their mind, because their religion told them to do it. No, they're reacting to something in real life that's happening. That's my rant.
Yeah, no, good rant. I enjoyed it. Thank you. And fair enough for you to pull me up on that. I misspoke in using ages old there, but
it's all good.
Yeah, obviously the events of 1948 have been a trigger for hostilities over the last 80 years or so. And no doubt, what happened in Bondi was specifically connected to everything that has happened in Gaza from the October 7 events. But worth picking me up on.
And
that.
it doesn't excuse what these guys did. They should get the fucking if one, I think, is one of them alive and one is dead.
Yeah,
is that
one of them's
happening?
In custody. Yeah, one of them was killed. The other in custody.
Execute them publicly. That's what should happen. But don't act like this this is out of nowhere. Oh, this is just what Muslims do. Yeah, there have been warring people. There are warring people for a long time. But after the last crusade, there really wasn't a lot of fucking shit that came toward Westerners. Muslim violence did not start coming towards Westerners until the United States decided, oh, we have to back up this little country in Israel. Why? Oh, because our country is friggin' infested with them.
Well,
so that's it.
I guess it depends if you consider Balkanoids Europeans or not, but that's another question for another day.
That's true.
but anyway, again, the thing needs to be stressed here. and we already pointed this out earlier, is that no Australians were, this story is about 15 dead Jewish people and 2 foreigners. Nobody here is like is a heritage Aussie or an Australian. So it's like you don't need gun control, you need immigration control, and this whole thing could have been avoided.
Yeah, you're allowing a war from halfway around the world to be waged on your soil. Fucking hell, man.
Yeah, correct. And some of the groups that operate in similar spheres to us have come out with rhetoric suggesting our politicians have blood on their hands for this. I tend to steer away from that because of what you just mentioned. Like there were no heritage Australians involved in this. So if this isn't happening here, it's probably happening somewhere else. Where you could make a stronger claim there is, if real Australians were actually caught in the crossfire or caught up in this. Look, it is a tragedy, so I don't want to say fortunately, because it's a terrible thing regardless. But obviously, my interests, being a nationalist, my interests are first and foremost in Australians and protecting Australians. So at the end of the day, Australians have become involved in this. This has played out in their homeland, in our homeland, and there's that question: what happens next time? What happens next time a foreign conflict unfolds in the way that this did on Australian shore? Do Australians get caught in the crossfire that time? And what does it take for something to actually happen? Something other than redirecting and saying, this is not about Islamic extremism. This is not about the pro-Palestinian movement. This is not about the ongoing Jewish activity in the Middle East, but this is about anti-Semitism and far-right extremism. When does it become about the things that we just mentioned, about the fact that this is a foreign conflict that has nothing to do with Australians and it is playing out on our shores?
I was mentioning this just before we went live that I was listening to Timeline Earth for the 12 Days of Birdmas, and Bird and Lee were on earlier today, and Lee made a great point, and he mentioned that he just feels tainted having to be exposed to these people, i.e., just basically advocating for the internet globalization that we're under right now. So why are any of these people here? Why do we have to communicate with them on the internet? Why do I have to log on and see some like Nigerian pretending to be an American, trying to cause like interference on American political discourse while making $45 on X to, feed his family or some shit? It's just, we were never asked for any of this stuff. Any of us in any of our countries, the Canadians, the English, the British, the Australians, the Americans, nobody asked for this shit at all. And it's all happening at the same time everywhere. We just are importing massive amounts of these people for no reason. Well, not for no reason, but for no benefit to us, we should say. So this discussion, it isn't about guns. It isn't even about foreign conflicts of foreign people or anything like this. It's just, we were never asked for this stuff. So why do we have to have these people in our countries? It's a very simple question to ask.
Yeah, and it's something that absolutely a very valid question, and something I think a lot of Australians aren't really aware of. The fact that in 1966, under Prime Minister Harold Holt, who was from the Liberal Party, the White Australia policy began to be dismantled, and then that process was effectively completed in 1975 under the Labor government of Gough Whitlam. So there was this bipartisan support for dismantling Australia's immigration policy, which had protected it for so long and ensured that social cohesion for so long. But it was never put to the people. And polling in the late 60s shows mass support for the White Australia policy. And then out of nowhere, bipartisan support for dismantling it.
What actually is the demographics of the population
in Australia at the moment?
Days? Yeah.
I don't have a breakdown at my fingertips. I think and it's a little bit difficult because you can declare yourself to be an Australian based on your citizenship, but it doesn't necessarily show what your ethnicity is. So the stats can be a little bit misleading. I believe at the last census, the suggestion was it was somewhere in the 70s in terms of the percentage of the population that is white. I would need to check that. But
so it's much it's much like the rest of us. It's going down. Yeah. It's going down in a direction. It was 90% plus white in all of our countries within living memory of many of like the older generations of our societies, and now it's rapidly changing in a negative direction. We can all say. I mean, so what's like the main other groups are what, like South Asians or Indians or like Filipinos, like what?
Certainly in Melbourne, where I'm based, I mean it is a real mixed bag, but that is the demographic that you notice the most and which has become the most dominant. Certainly, it's one that's been actively targeted by the Australian government in terms of getting more and more of them over. I refer to we call them suburbs, but we use the word suburbs a bit differently from you guys, like the outer neighbourhoods of our cities we refer to as the suburbs. And so the outer suburbs of Melbourne I refer to now as the Ring of Fire, because it's basically just been taken over entirely by Indians. And that was a big part of my waking up to what was going on. My realignment of my political views was living in and amongst that. I worked in a place on the northern fringe of Melbourne. Sorry, no, I lived in a place on the northern fringe of Melbourne. I worked in a place on the western fringe of Melbourne. And they were effectively Indian enclaves and quite shamelessly trying to turn them into places that only Indians would want to occupy. There are companies operating called Bombay Real Estate. There's a place in Melbourne and in the western part of Melbourne called Tarneet, and there was a development that was happening at one of the major junctions there, and it was called Indian Junction. Eventually, there was enough whites left to protest it that became abandoned, and they renamed it just Tarneet Junction. But this is what we're seeing. We're seeing takeover of the suburbs, and it's an incredibly alienating experience to walk around these parts of Melbourne, these parts of the homeland that your ancestors fought and in some cases died for in conflicts such as World War One, and to find that you feel like you're a foreigner in your own country. And I think more and more young men in particular are having that really alienating experience and starting to wake up to what's going on.
Well, let me ask you this, Mitch. I remember seeing a movie in the 90s, and the main character, played by Russell Crowe, was really upset over Vietnamese immigrants. Is that still, does anybody even talk about the Vietnamese anymore?
Not really, no. So yeah, I know the film that you're talking about. It's called Romper Stomper, and certainly there was an issue with Vietnamese gangs. And look, there is still an issue with Vietnamese crime in cities, in the major cities in Australia, and in places like Melbourne and Sydney. But that problem, if you like, has been dwarfed by one, the rise of Chinese migration through the 1990s and beyond, and the questionable influence, shall we say, of that, or the negative influence of that, and how that ties in with China and the Communist Party's broader goals. But then more recently, Indian immigration. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming in a way that, look, I didn't grow up in that time, the time when the first waves of Vietnamese migrants came. So I'm only speculating here, but certainly the numbers, or the way that it feels walking through these communities, and the total dominance of the Indians in these places, and two, the numbers on the paper suggest that this is far, far greater than what was going on then. So, there has been, assimilation is not the right word, but I think the extent to which that problem of antisocial Vietnamese behaviour is really public and in the public, the forefront of the public consciousness, I think that has diminished pretty significantly. But it's been replaced by something much more overwhelming, I think, which is the Indian presence in Melbourne in particular.
Yeah, it seems that it's one of those things, like once we saw like the legal Indian immigration here, people saw it as a much bigger existential threat than Guatemalans and Mexicans coming over the southern border, which is still, it shouldn't be here. But yeah, it's I get it when you start talking about Indians, because Vivek Ramaswamy, Ramadingla, Star Wars name, I don't know, is running for governor of one of our oldest states. And it's like, well, do you vote?
We'll
do you vote for the? Yeah, do you vote for the female libtard just because you're like, all right, I'd rather have a white libtard than than him. I don't know.
Well, she's a fellow white, but still.
Is she? I haven't been able to find any information on that.
That's what people are saying. So
yeah, I know, but
I say that about everyone too. So
look, if it was true, I would be on top of that, right?
Very true. Very true. Well, before we get too far afield and talking about Vivek Ramalama Bing Bong again, let us continue on with, we're not just talking about this because of the mass immigration front. One of the other things that is really important to talk about with this one shooting is just the fact that the local police are just not really going to protect you. This is just the nature of things. People have given the Second Amendment a lot of guff over the last couple of years. A lot of it rightly warranted, because there's a faction of GOP boomers who are just waiting, for the day. It's like, oh, any day now, the guys with the guns are going to rise up and we're going to overthrow the government, the blood of tyrants, yada, 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 stuff that everyone's all familiar with, right? And this has kind of been swung back at everyone saying, oh, well, the Second Amendment is just kind of useless. Well, that's not entirely true either. I'm very happy to be living in a state where as soon as somebody touches my property without my consent, I'm allowed to blow them away, and everybody should be living in states like that. But it is important for everybody to be armed, be trained with firearms, know how to protect and defend yourself, because you could be in a situation like this at this Bondi Beach, where the female cops show up and decide to cower in fear, instead of confronting the shooters. So let's watch this clip real quick of two of Australia's finest, I would say. The other thing I'll say about this is just the lack of situational awareness on basically everyone. Pete, I'm sure you were looking at this too, thinking the same thing I was. It's like, there's guys on their phones. There's people just like looking in both directions. What the hell is this?
It's ridiculous. I mean, you hit the fucking floor, and you pull your pistol and you hit the fucking floor. But it's like, I mean, is a woman in this country ever going to get a W? Ever? It's just all else. It's so for those of us for those of us who are married and love women and love their mother, please just can a woman give us a W once?
It's pretty damning footage, isn't it? I was a little bit late to the party on this one, because I heard the Premier of New South Wales was responding to criticism that the the police hadn't handled the situation particularly well, and he was talking about officers that were shot in the front as part of the conflict. And I thought, oh, okay, I don't really know what this is about, where the criticism has come from, and it's only been in the last day or two that I've actually seen this footage. So yeah, it's part of a growing trend. We're seeing more and more female officers, and yeah, I don't know if they're making a particular point of sending them into these situations, but these, any kind of conflict situation. I remember my wife talking about being on a train, and there was someone that refused to get off and was being a man who was being very uncooperative and looked like he had the potential to get violent. And so they stopped the train at one of the stations, and this female officer comes on, and she's asking him to leave, and he won't get off. So they have to send backup. They send backup, and more female police officers turn up. And the train was delayed interminably because it wasn't until they finally sent a male police officer that they could actually get this guy off the train. So it was like they were going out of their way to send more and more female officers there. And yeah, obviously that's a pretty low stakes example there. Just one that comes to mind from personal experience, or at least the experience of my wife. But yeah, it paints a pretty grim picture of policing in Australia. A lot of our ad campaigns for recruiting for the police force now are based around a flexible lifestyle and good pay, and nothing to do with the demands of the job. No, there's no marketing based around wanting to protect and serve or anything like this. It's just about, hey, do you want a cushy job where you don't have to do much and you can get paid really well? Why not think about becoming a police officer? And this is what you get as a result of that, I think.
The other thing that we might shed some light on this a little bit more is that just in the age of the longhouse and women being forced into everything in the workforce, it just might be the point where men are just checking out of these fields because they know it's just no country for white men. We're going to get into that topic in a bit here, but just like, oh, okay, well, this traditionally masculine space is no longer available to me, so I'm just not going to sign up to join the police force. You're seeing this big deal right now in the UK where they're flexing that they're going to try and go to war with Russia, and they're really doing this anti-patriotism rhetoric on right-wingers who are saying, I don't want to fight for this country because you flooded it with migrants and you can't take care of the economy, and you've got rapists walking around on every street and every corner. It's like, yeah, why would I join the police force if this is the situation, or why would I join the military if this is the way like my country treats me? Well, it's a legitimate question to ask.
It's the same, it's the same thing. A lot of the guys who came back from GWAT, from fighting GWAT, were like, why am I out here fighting for Israel? It's like, why did I even do this? And they became literally some of our strongest soldiers, no pun intended.
Yeah, I'm sure there's an element of that here in Australia. How conscious the recognition is that the demographic direction of our country has really sent things downhill. How much that is at the forefront of the minds of men who are choosing not to go into the police force now, when in the past maybe they would have. I don't know. I can only speculate on that, but I would have to think it plays a role. You look around at society now and you think of the idea of signing up for the police force, and you think, what am I protecting here? Anything that was worth protecting, that ship has sailed a long time ago. So yeah, I can only imagine that plays a pretty significant role here as well.
Yeah, I'm just piggybacking off of what we know is the case in the United States, because we saw a sharp decline in people applying for police forces after 2020 and the great St. Floyd riots that we had over here, where cops are just doing the cost benefit analysis of, well, if I do my job and if I kill a black man when he's charging me or anything else that regularly occurs when you're a police officer in the United States, I'm going to do life in prison. It's like, this ain't worth it, man. I'm out. So we know that's the case over here with the statistics. So no doubt this trend is going to continue throughout the rest of the Anglosphere as the demographic changes continue, and the state becomes just more and more authoritarian towards its heritage populations. I mean, it's just nuts every day. I see like some of the stories coming out of the UK where it's just, local man said 2 tweets, now in prison for 18 months. And just on the same side, it's like local rapist let free because reasons. Well, it's crazy. But we do have one more clip we want to show about this shooting. And it was, in fact, that day. It was a local that actually went by and disarmed one of these shooters and crept up behind him. This is definitely a quite courageous thing to do, I'll say at the very least. We'll have more to comment on this after we watch this video. But at the very front of it, jumping into stop a mass shooting when you yourself are not armed with a gun is a courageous act.
Oh! C'est un malade. Oh mon gros! Oh! Mais il va se faire tirer dessus.
He should have shot him in the fucking face.
Oh yeah, he should have just wasted him right there. Look at him, he's just like prancing around still. Ugh. Maybe he didn't know how to work the gun or anything.
Just pull the trigger. Fuck.
Yeah, really.
I mean, it looks like a shotgun, right?
Yeah, it looks like one to me. Pump action of some kind. Yeah, I mean, of course, later footage shows that this shooter goes back to the bridge and picks up another firearm and proceeds to start shooting again. So, I mean, it's just we go over this in like self-defense situations all the time here. This is pretty common knowledge for us. And again, like why people are always like bitching about like the cops and stuff over here when they don't know any better. It's like, oh, well, why are you shooting him like 10 times or whatever? It's like, no, like you mag dump people, you need to make sure they're down. And so in this case, yeah, this guy absolutely just should have wasted him right there. But then that goes into the same kind of discussion we were talking about beforehand. It's like, would that guy go to prison now because he returned fire and shot this guy? There have been many cases of that in the United States and in the rest of the Anglosphere of somebody kills their would-be attacker, and no, it's like you're on the hook now.
Now, Mitch, was this a white guy, or I was hearing that he was also from some other godforsaken hellhole?
Yeah, you're hearing correctly, Pete, and that's the main point of interest that's come out of this story. Certainly for the media outlets reporting on it, for the politicians that have the opportunity to speak about it, they can sort of wipe their brows in relief at being able to say that this was a Muslim, an Arab Muslim who actually intervened and took the weapon off this guy. I did see one Telegram channel jokingly post the narrative survives because the hero in this situation is a Muslim, proving that real Muslims don't do these sorts of things.
Well, I mean, the guy wasn't even a hero. The guy wasn't even a hero. He didn't even stop him. He just went back and got another gun. I mean, so
yeah, we can certainly ask questions over that. I mean, I think the point that you raise about what would happen to someone if they did that in that situation is probably a valid one. But look, all credit where it's due. A crazy brave thing to be doing. But yes, of course, the fact that he comes from where he does has meant that the media outlets over here have really latched onto that as evidence that we live in one of the most successful multicultural countries in the world, I guess.
It's just so crazy, the whole situation. It's like, okay, so we have 2 foreigners imported who opened fire on a group of other foreigners practicing a foreign religion. We have the state-mandated DEI girl boss cops who refuse to do anything and just revert to regular female programming and not confronting violence, not, really to the fault of the women for their nature, but it's definitely to the fault of them or the state for putting them in that situation in the first place. And then we've got another foreigner who decides to run in, take a gun from a guy, either doesn't shoot him because he doesn't want to shoot a co-ethnic, doesn't shoot him because he doesn't know how to work the firearm, doesn't shoot him because he doesn't want to get in trouble himself from the laws of the state, whatever. This is just like multiple points of failure on so many fronts. And then like the audacity for the powers that be to just, take the victory lap and say, oh, look, we can't deport any Muslims because a Muslim came here and took a gun from this guy. All is forgiven, everyone. It's such a fucking joke.
Yeah, it's interesting to say the least. And Something you said then made me think of this, but one of the responses following this as well has come from the Jewish community. You know, they're angry with our government. They're angry with our government and our law enforcement for not doing enough to protect this event, as though picnics and barbecues on the beachfront are something where we should just expect a massive police presence in anticipation of, you know, two guys just rocking up with semi-automatic weapons and trying to kill 16 people, or succeeding in killing 16 people. The fact that this is part of the discourse now, that, you know, there's an expectation that if there's a Jewish event going on, the government and the law enforcement agencies, they really need to be stepping up to ensure that all hands are on deck to protect this event. Well, no. The situations like that, the foreign conflicts that have been imported here to create that situation in the first place, they just shouldn't be here. And it might have been the word audacity that set me off there. You talked about the audacity of the politicians in saying, "Oh, look at this heroic Muslim proof of what a wonderful, successful multicultural country we live in." But the audacity of the Jewish community coming out and saying, well, we basically expect all your resources to be allocated to stop people from coming in and shooting us, because that's something that we just expect on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah,
it's insane.
The chutzpah one might say.
Well, fuck, you can't protect them. You can't protect your own people in your own country. Either you can't protect them, you won't protect them, or you fucking kill them yourself on October 7th. Who the fuck are you to tell everybody else that you need to protect Jews when you can't even protect your own people, and you're supposed to have the greatest surveillance in the world? Go fuck yourself. How about they all just go to Israel? They have their own country, take the parasitic fucking diaspora and just fucking go home. And then you'll have all the wealth, you'll have all the world's wealth that all of our wealth that you're taking with you. Fucking shit. And you have all the great minds, all the Nobel Prize laureates that I always hear about that are so much smarter than I am. And then you can you can protect your country. You can have fucking lasers. People try to invade, you can fucking vaporize them with lasers. How about you fucking go back there? Oh no. Then you wouldn't be able to have every fucking country that you've inhabited, pay for your shit back there.
It's the same. It's the same thing that we've been addressing here for the last couple of years since October 7th, when everyone has just particularly gone full ordeal of civility on us over the last couple of years, in the sense of, oh, we need to police every single social media platform, every university, screen everyone on the immigration tests for how anti-Semitic you are. And it's like, motherfucker, not only were you the ones that were in charge of most of the organizations that were bringing these people into our countries in the first place, you're the people who vote for these politicians. Well, it's just the audacity of these people, who also were like doing nothing when this was targeting the heritage populations of the countries that were gracious enough to them to let them live in, right? Instead of, expelling them for 110, 111, 112, how many fucking times it would have been, at this point. It's just, we got to drop everything and protect the Jewish community. Are you guys going to do anything to protect the heritage populations of this country? Oh, no. We want to continue funneling your country full of all of these foreigners that commit more of these acts. But we just want more of your state resources to be funneled away from protecting other people who are going to be attacked by these, monsters that you've let into all of our nations. It's just unbelievable, man.
Yeah, no further comment.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I guess the last question I'll have on this, Mitch, is that where do you expect this to go? I mean, I've heard many reports on, mostly just things around like gun control is what's going to come from this. It doesn't seem like the powers that be are interested in taking a task the immigration or mass deportations or anything like this. What is the general state of Australia after this tragedy, and what do you think are the prospects for the future of your country in perhaps the short term here, or maybe even the long term, if you have more information to give our audience about that?
Not sure about that. About the long term, we as an organisation, we sort of speculate on that as well. Where do we see ourselves? Do we see ourselves taking back control of our country? Do we see ourselves as having to fight to just occupy our own space as heritage Australians within Australia and sort of continue to navigate this multicultural? Well, society is the wrong word because it's not a society. This multicultural space that has been thrust upon us, that's an ongoing source of debate and discussion amongst our members, and I think the nationalist movement more broadly. But in terms of the aftermath of this event, hard to say. Early days. I certainly agree that the powers that be, the major parties in Australian politics, will do absolutely nothing to address immigration unless it is forced upon them. We are seeing a rise in popularity of a minor party, one of the larger minor parties that has been around for some time, called One Nation. Now, One Nation and its leader Pauline Hanson made waves back in the 1990s for really pushing back strongly against Asian immigration. She actually ended up serving jail time at one point for, I think it might have been like fraud-related matters. Don't quote me on that. And then returned to politics and has sort of maintained this fairly stable presence, occupying a few places in Parliament, whether that be as a spot in the Senate or House of Representatives. But there has been a bit of a surge of interest there, but unfortunately, and there are some that say this was always the case, and she was always a fake, never really a true nationalist. The policies that she's promoting have very much been watered down. She's been filmed in public saying you don't have to be white to be Australian now, and it's about values and things like that. So really defaulting to a pretty standard kind of conservative position. So would a groundswell in support for a party like that force the hand of the major parties to make any kind of change? Probably not. But I do wonder if we will see a rise in interest, popularity of, or even the formation of new political parties within Australia that will more explicitly address immigration. There are some early signs of that already happening. There's a group. No, I might leave it there actually, but. So it remains to be seen what happens there. But certainly, I think as far as the major parties are concerned, tighter gun controls will be their first port of call, and they'll do everything in their power to ignore the issue of immigration for as long as they can, unfortunately. So, that maybe gives you some idea of where we're heading, unless we do get that groundswell of support and some kind of minor party emerges to disrupt the system.
Well, seems like it's just the story throughout all of our countries that things are going to get a little bit worse before they get better. But all of us do see a light at the end of this tunnel. The light is shining over the horizon. That everything is just moving in our direction. We're past peak woke. We're past peak Zionism. All this nonsense are all going the way of the dinosaur. We just need time to organize for ourselves. And hopefully we can bring about the change that we want to see in all of our own countries. And I think it's also important, especially us over here as Americans, we should be focusing on our own issues, of course, but at the same time, all of our white and Anglo brethren throughout the entire world are all facing the exact same issues that we are. And it's very important for us to maintain contact with each other as new ideas, new tactics, new legislative ground is gained throughout the entire world. And it's important for us to be swapping notes, how best we can deal with our issues in our own countries. So, yes, but we thank you for sharing that with us, Mitch. All right. So shall we carry on, gentlemen, to our next story? We were kind of making allusions to this throughout this discussion with Vivek Ramaswamy Bing Bong, but in what is now becoming like the new Christmas tradition, apparently, is Vivek having a crash out on Christmas Day. So here we go. So Vivek just yesterday took out an op-ed in the New York Times, and of course he addressed the number one question facing Americans today is, what is an American? Take a wild guess, everyone. Of course, he does not answer the question correctly at all. So, I mean, the first point I'll make on this is that if you're arguing, you're losing, right? We talk about this all the time, that if you're on the back foot and you have to explain, what an American is, like you have to explain that the sky is blue. This is just a tactic used by enemies to distract you from doing actual work here, okay? These people aren't meant to be engaged with. These people aren't acting in good faith. These people are enemies, and they always will be enemies. And this is just proven to us right here, because what does Vivek do? He could have taken this out in Chronicles. He could have gone on Fox News to talk about this. He could have gone on any other like right-wing platform or right-wing Substacker. He could have gone on Tim Pool. He could have gone on The Blaze. He could have done anything like this. But what did he do? He ran to the enemy. He ran to an enemy publication using enemy language, because at the end of the day, he agrees with them. He agrees with their worldview. This is where he's coming from. So we don't need to engage with this guy on the very face of it right away. Pete, your initial thoughts? And actually, you know what? Before you get that, really quick, Pete, Mitch, you're going to take off here. We appreciate you for giving us an update from Down Under. And if there's anything we could do for you in the future, my friend, definitely reach on out to us, and perhaps we'll have you back on in a couple of months and get another update from our Australia friends.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on. And I know things are pretty grim over there, but in spite of that, I'll wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yes, and to you as well, my friend. Thank you.
Same to you.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
All right. So aside from the, of course, the train sounds, which I will never get over. It's one of my favorite things on the soundboard. Pete, what do you have to say?
What a fucking scumbag. I mean, he did it last year during the Christmas season. He does it this year during the Christmas season. He knows what he's doing. He's trying to, this is just to try and demoralize us during our season. This isn't the season where we worship friggin' 10 or 1,000 different gods with 6 arms and 5 heads, and the god of the train whistle. This is our season. Fuck you, Vivek. There's no way this can be a serious country if he's not like deported tomorrow. I mean, I've heard that he is just, even the people he knows hate him. Even people who know him and or have known him for years hate him. They may have to put up with him for whatever reason, yada yada. I mean, did you hear that his net worth doubled in the last year? He went from worth $1 billion to $2 billion in the last. How did he do that? Why the fuck are we allowing that?
He did that just through hard work and grit in the American way, Pete. That's exactly how he got it. And if you suggest anything to the otherwise, you are a mean, no good, groiper racist.
I am serious. We deport and take his wealth from him.
Oh yeah,
none of these people can be. So many of these people need to be kicked out, and their wealth needs to be taken from them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was a topic that was getting paraded around Twitter the last couple of days, when people were doing the math on how much money is locked up in various NGOs that are headquartered in the United States. And somewhere in between the realm of 14 to $16 trillion are locked up in these NGOs. And the response for some of our guys was just, why don't we just take this? Why is this allowed? So it's definitely a serious question that needs to be asked. But again, we kind of have to cut a few Gordian knots before we even get to that point to begin with. But, as it relates to this article, again, like, we're stressing this for everyone in the audience that just do the Sam Hyde thing. You don't need to argue with these people. These people aren't in good faith. They're not on our team. They're actively working in the enemy camp, fleeing to enemy platforms, using enemy language to subvert and distract us during the great season of Christmas, which, of course, this clown doesn't fucking celebrate, which is why he's doing this right now. But for the actual contents of the article, which we're also going to rip apart, Of course, what does Vivek go back on? The same things that we've been shredding him apart for over the last year. What does it mean to be American? It means we believe in colorblind meritocracy. It means we believe in the rule of law. It means we believe in hard work, yada, yada, yada. Basically, America didn't exist before 1965 in the views of Vivek Ramaswamy, right? And also, the guy is just in blatant violation of all of his own standards of what it means to be an American, because I'm sorry, there's nothing in there about the American dream and working hard that is scamming a pharmaceutical company that and you're also the child of anchor baby, like you're an anchor baby child as well. How is that anything to do with hard work, colorblind meritocracy, and being part of the American dream? So, and then of course the other natural response to this as well is that, oh, so if these are the standards for what it is to be an American, Vivek, surely that means you're honestly, like, if this was the standards, right, there would be more people that would qualify for mass deportations than even we would say. But of course, he's not going to be for that, right? He's not going to say we can deport anybody on this because people could just lie, and say, oh, yeah, we are for this, But seriously, if that was going to be the standard for the United States, that you believe in the rule of law, believe in colorblind meritocracy, well, that's just literally everybody who votes for the Democrats just immediately gets deported immediately. We'd have like a country of 50 million people. So,
and in the article, he quotes Ronald Reagan. I mean, does he realize it's like the only people left who don't look back on Reagan and go, well, yeah, I mean, if you were alive for Reagan, you were like, yeah, the Cold War is going on. Russia could bomb us anytime. At least Reagan's talking tough, yada, yada. But we all realize that Reagan was a piece of shit. And you're going to quote Reagan saying, oh, well, if you go French, you can't become a French person, but anyone can become an American. And this guy took away our machine guns. This guy gave mass amnesty to illegals. I mean, increased the federal debt, exponentially, when he didn't have to. It's they're so out of touch. And and someone in the chat said, I mean, it's just basically rage bait. And really, that's what it is. But when you understand that it's rage bait, that he's doing this on purpose, then you have to understand that there is no way you can allow him to take office. You have to make sure he is fucking humiliated. I mean, he needs to be humiliated.
Absolutely.
I will remind people, when Alex Jones came back to Twitter, Elon did a Spaces where a whole bunch of people, I mean, it was probably one of the most attended Spaces of all time. And Vivek didn't mute his microphone and took a piss. He's a garbage person. The only thing we can hope is that he gets hit by a fucking train, because we know Ohio is so well run that trains friggin' derail there. Let's just hope he gets hit by a train.
It's just such a joke, man, that this guy is being run as like the model minority to run Ohio now into next year. Didn't even decide to have a primary. The Ohio GOP is already endorsing him, right? I mean, we do have a couple characters who are running against him. Hopefully they gain some traction, much like what is going on with James Fishback down in Florida, running against Byron. So hopefully some of these candidates can come up and go after some of these model minority people that the GOP is just addicted to running at this point. But the thing to be looking forward for our guys for the next couple of years is that basically the GOP either needs to be taken over or completely destroyed. So whatever you guys need to be doing in your spare time as it relates to what's coming up to the midterms, you need to either ensure that candidates like Vivek just completely fail, or you replace them with people who are based and who are like us. So those are the two options available. We can't be continuing to limp along like this, where we win the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and have the judiciary allegedly on our side. We'll see what happens with this ruling on birthright citizenship coming up soon. I personally am a little lukewarm about that, to say the very least. But we can't be locked into the situation where we have all branches of government and 75% of the Republicans in the House and the Senate just, side with the enemy every single time. Like this cannot continue. So the GOP either needs to be taken over or completely destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah. You can, Stormy says all the time that the GOP and Con Inc. are greater enemies than the left. And the reason why they're greater enemies than the left is because when the left comes after us, they're going to help them. They're not going to try to stop them. They're going to help them. That's why they're the greater enemy, because they pretend to be on the right. They pretend to be normal. They pretend to be not be freaks.
They're betrayers, which is where the deepest circle of hell is for.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. So, again, I'm not an Ohio native, but I know who I would be voting for in this coming election if I was there, and it certainly would not be Vivek. I'll tell you that much. All right. So, in combination with this story that came out yesterday, another story that was making the rounds, Pete, was the story called "The Lost Generation." Was an article that was making the rounds yesterday. JD Vance himself actually retweeted this and had a long thread about this, basically agreeing with everything. And to JD Vance's credit on this one, saying that DEI was actually just deliberate destruction and targeting of white men. That's what it always was. It's one thing that, like, when people like rip on DEI and stuff, they talk about how, what it actually was for is to, the advancements of certain groups, and it just didn't really work out because, these other unforeseen circumstances. It actually is a really big deal that JD Vance just calls it what it is. It's like, no, you discriminated against white men to the detriment of literally our entire society because nothing fucking works anymore. So, I mean, that's definitely a good sign, to say the very least, that people are openly talking about this, which was just faux pas even like 5 years ago, right? And actually still is, if you talk to a lot of like boomer-con right-wingers who are just like, oh, well, this is like a victim narrative. You guys don't want to be victims. That's what the left is like. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about this, Pete, that it seems to be more and more acceptable as the economy gets ever worse and more of the Republican base is becoming like the young guys, basically, that they kind of have to acknowledge the fact that, our best and brightest are cut out of the housing market, cut out of the job market, cut out of the marriage market. Well, what do you think?
Well, if I remember correctly, Mr. Savage's, his prescriptions were, we need equal footing. Well, equal footing will literally mean that like 0.3% of the doctors in this country will be black. Going back to Con Inc. and the GOP, and they're not going to allow this. Boomers aren't going to allow that. There's going to be an uprising. The answer to this is not to level the playing field. The answer to this is insane amounts of patronage to our guys, diverting huge amounts, huge piles of dollars to our guys. That's the way you turn this around. Reparations for what had been taken away from our guys. That's the way you do it.
Yep. All those stolen bikes and all the various opportunities that our guys were denied simply because of the color of their skin and what was dangling between their legs. Well, that is,
you can only go so far. I mean, remember, there are still white people in South Africa who are shit libs. You're basically going to have to force it upon people. The social engineering regime that has happened for the last 80 years has engineered people's thinking. We still suffer from it sometimes. Guys on our side suffer from it sometimes. And it's just, I mean, it shows how powerful it is. The only way around that, or the only way through it, or the only way to negate it is to do what they did. I mean, just pour money into our guys' coffers to the point where we can do whatever the fuck we want.
Dude, I was talking about this in one of our chats recently, but just imagine the bizarro world, the complete reverse it would have been if the US aid was funneling money for research projects for our guys, basically, right? And it would be so absurd to the point of where we would be able to get entire like arsenals paid for by the United States government and go in our backyard and basically like shoot whatever we wanted to test and see if like makeup was bulletproof or some shit. That's the level of insanity and millions upon millions of dollars that were funneled directly into our enemies' pockets that our tax dollars paid for. Now, it's
Yeah.
just been such an uneven playing field for so long. And you make an excellent point too about the mind viruses and the brain worms that our guys just live with just every day because like our enemy's just been in control of all the institutions for decades at this point. I mean, one of my personal ones I have a gripe with is like the extinction of the American bison. That's still something that so many people in our thing think, oh, that's just market hunters. It's like it's just no like historical evidence for this literally whatsoever. It's the same as like blood libel with smallpox blankets, and we still have guys on our side just parroting this all the time. Well, and there's a myriad of other ones that people just walk around with their everyday lives. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, but
And
you're totally right. I mean, the solution isn't, oh, we just got to give everything back to, an equal playing field here. The other problem with this article as well, and a lot of people were pointing out, and while it does make some excellent points with the actual history of what a lot of our guys have been through, and he does have a lot of like personal anecdotes in there, what his situation was like, and I'm sure a lot of us can relate to it in some way or another. Like, we got the degree we were told to get. We tried to apply for all the jobs afterwards. All the jobs were taken by women and minorities. We ended up working in a career that was not advertised to us that we were going to get with our degree. We were significantly underpaid. We had to scrape by. Our relationship prospects weren't that great. I mean, almost everybody in this chat can relate with at least some part of that story, right? But his conclusion at the end is, oh, I don't want to be upset at the women and minorities who took these positions above me. I would do it in the same position. It's like, I mean, there's like a bit of admiration in that to some degree, to not like live your life full of anger at the same time. But to be honest, it's like there needs to be people who are punished for what they have done to us. Now, maybe you could say it's not necessarily like the people that took the positions above you, but the people who were hiring them absolutely should. The people who are putting in these laws all over the entire country absolutely should be punished as well.
no show sinecure jobs that pay mid six figures. No, I mean, po- elected to all the state. Our guys get elected to all the state positions, most powerful positions, the judgeships, everything like that, governorships. I mean, why? These people haven't. These people haven't worked. Our enemies haven't done a day's work in their fucking life. It's about time our guys can do that. Where all we do is sit around and we're paid enough, we have all the power, and all we do all day is sit around and like, okay, there's a group of our enemies over there. How are we going to destroy them? What are we going to do? And we're just drawing it out on a fucking whiteboard. Just like, okay, there's this way. Okay, now let's go do it. Why? Because no one's standing in our way. I mean, we talk about a guy who wrestles a friggin' shotgun out of some terrorist fucking hands, and he feels scared to shoot him because to put him down so that he can't continue his attack. Go get another weapon and continue his attack. I mean, that shouldn't even be a question. That guy should be like, I mean, the guy should get his own day, like a national day just devoted to this guy. That's what our guys. We don't win until that happens. We don't even think that we've won until that happens because we haven't. And that's exactly what any real patronage network set up for our guys would do. Would basically give us the power to destroy our enemies. Look, if the elected politicians feel like, well, we don't want deputize us. Deputize us. Do like that,
Yeah.
like those sheriffs said when they were talking about banning guns. I'll just deputize everybody in the whole town so they're law enforcement. Now they can have everything now they can carry or buy anything they want. Deputize us. We'll take care of this. We have the guys to do it.
Yep. It's same thing we talk about all the time on these shows. Well, most important thing is to buddy up. Well, in times like this, you got to have your own networks. It's unfortunate, but as the days pass more and more, we just literally need to recreate the entire right wing by ourselves. And it's not fair and it's not right. But you know what? To quote Gandalf, we don't get to live. We don't get to choose the times we live in.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All righty. Let's tackle our last story here, Pete, for the night, and then we can call it. But I mean, we were talking about how dark and grim the thumbnail was on the stream tonight, but we're gonna have to talk about this one, man, because this is just crazy. So here we go. Here's a picture of old Ella Cook here, the young woman, 19-year-old, head vice president of the Republican group on Brown University's campus in Rhode Island, was brutally murdered last week. And as of right now, I know that there's like some speculation going on in the chat that apparently they found the guy, apparently they haven't. I don't know. I'm not going to make any comments on that. We'll wait. The information will come out one way or another.
Apparently he's dead.
Yeah. Well, up until we started the stream, the very capable police and very capable FBI were doing a great job of finding this guy. And we had excellent video surveillance around everything. So, I mean, let's just go through what actually did happen in this case that we know, right? So this poor girl, brutally shot and murdered, along with one other person, and then another 9 injuries took place in a room on Brown University's campus, which, by the way, I would just like to stress at the front of this. This is a literal school shooting that took place, and, Democrats are just completely pulling cover for this and being silent on it, just truly like the most evil people in the world, right? But obviously this is a huge escalation from the killing that occurred on Charlie Kirk, again, on a university campus earlier this year, and the complete inaction of the Trump administration. This girl would likely still be alive if they had literally done anything to punish the left in the wake of Charlie Kirk. So that needs to be said front and center at this point, because it's just obvious that the left just had a total complete victory as it relates to the Charlie Kirk assassination. The right did fuck all, basically, except give Candace Owens a bunch of views, which is like, that's even worse. That's actually even worse than doing nothing. But so the killer was on the loose. Apparently the security cameras were just either off, deactivated, Brown was covering it up, something to that degree. I heard there were multiple stories going on with this one that allegedly Brown University had shut down their security cameras earlier this year because they weren't cooperating with ICE. And so they were like, oh, we're not going to give any security camera footage over to deport illegals. So that could be part of this. Another part of this was speculation that the shooter either knew somebody who was involved with the security cameras, or that the university administration is just full of such radical leftists, as all of our campuses are, that they were just pulling cover for this guy, which obviously is what it seemed like with the actual, administration of the university. They're just taking questions from the press, and even like, your very basic, local press teams are just asking questions like, what? Are you kidding me? These are your answers? You have nothing, 6 days later, or how many days on it's been, and you have no information for us whatsoever. So, I mean, I guess we'll see what happens when they found the person shot. But the important thing to hear is that this is a huge, huge escalation, and it's only going to get worse. And the other thing I'll add on this is that the FBI did fucking nothing on this one. This should have been on, I said it last night on Mr. D's Twitter space, right? It's like, it seems like this administration keeps getting fastballs thrown right down the middle with stuff you could do with this. You could clobber this ball right into the center field, clearing the stands. This is such a layup for you. Literally the day of a shooting like this occurred, Kash Patel or whoever is in charge, or whatever, administrative body you were able to use on this one, should have just said, Brown University, tanks in Brown Yard. You can't even protect your own students from political violence on there. We're cranking down on the entire university system. This is out of control. But of course, not only did we have no help for actually going to find the killer with this, there was just no action taken on the front. And to be honest, the Democrats were doing their absolute best to ensure that everyone was focusing on Christmas with their families and just completely covering up this political school shooting that took place. So that's a lot, Pete. But what do you have?
I mean, it's hard. It's hard to know exactly right now. I mean, she's from about an hour and a half away from where I live. I heard she's from over in Birmingham. She was the other person who was shot's name is Muhammad Aziz, Star Wars name. I don't know if they were walking together or what the hell happened here. Not a lot's come out. I mean, from everything I've seen, like the suspect was another brown guy that we don't know. Possibly, I saw one name that some of that, like I think 4chan had come up with, and it looked like another Star Wars name. I mean, this is just this has become just normalized, and no one no one's stepping up. We're the only people talking about this. We're the only people outraged by this. Like I said in the last segment, it's like if we had money to have security for these people, if we had patronage, this kind of stuff wouldn't happen. We have guys who would volunteer to keep our people safe, especially on campuses. I mean, these campuses should be ours anyway. Most of these campuses were started as friggin' schools to teach the Bible. Now look what they teach. Now look what they're infested by. People who don't even, who either don't believe the Bible or they completely pervert, have perversions of it. Or, I mean, I just don't know what to say anymore, except that there has to be a way that these people just get put down. I mean, the fact that they're, whether it's political or whether it's racial, and we know that both of those are pretty much interchangeable at this point. We say it all the time. We can't keep living like this, but really, I mean, I don't know. If I had a 19-year-old daughter who just went to college and got gunned down, I don't know what I would do. I don't, I know what I would tell the CRS if they showed up, and thank God they're not around anymore.
Yeah, at least
But
that.
I'm completely frustrated by this because we know what the answer to this is, and the Trump administration isn't doing anything about it. Oh, deportations. Oh, remigrations. And I know that they've hired a ton of new people who have to go through training, yada yada. But look, there are National Guard guys in every state who would volunteer to support this. I mean, I know you can't take active duty, but there are people leaving the military all the time who just are looking to do something where they feel like they're actually doing something to serve their fellow Americans. And really the best way to serve your fellow Americans right now, if you're just a normal person, is to do all you can to start calling the hotline whenever you see somebody where you're like, they don't belong here, and try to get as many people out of this freaking country as possible. I mean, that's the only thing that's other than the patronage I was talking about, and our guys being deputized, and these people being scared to do things like this. There was a time in this country where the criminal was scared, thought twice about doing something fucked up, because they weren't scared of law enforcement. They were scared of the normal everyday citizen who has 25 friends. And, you know, until we get that back, I don't know what happens.
I mean, I'm reminded by Sam Hyde's video he put out just after Charlie Kirk's assassination. This is you. No, and that's all I could think at this point. You know, it's like looking at this picture of this poor girl. You know, it almost makes me want to cry. It's just, we don't have to live like this. We know the solutions. We know our enemies will be mad at the solutions. We know the media will call us bad names at the solutions. Who fucking cares? Do you think this girl would have cared? She'd still be alive. Whole life ahead of her. Could have had a beautiful family, 19 years old. It's just like nothing more to say, man. It's like, when are we gonna get serious? Let's say,
I mean, I'm way too close to Fed posting.
Yeah. It's just tragic. So tragic, and even more so infuriating that, you know, there's probably going to be another 10 of these, even more. It's just nobody is doing anything. And it's only going to get worse, man. So everybody out there, stay strapped. Keep your head on a swivel, because it's open season on right-wingers in the United States. Even if you're a 19-year-old girl on a college campus. So that's all we can say on this one. Buddy up. Join the OGC. Learn to protect and defend yourself. It's becoming more important as the days go by. You know, we can't deal with this, you know, excuses for the Trump team anymore on this front. We really just can't. This is the most basic understanding of politics and political patronage. Can you protect me? Do you defend me? And if you can't do that, then, like, what is all the rest of this even worth? No, I remember everybody was talking about how, like, you know, we have 2 weeks to act after Charlie Kirk, and if we don't do anything, then Trump is going to lose his base forever. And it's like, okay, are like we the only ones who actually took that rhetoric seriously here? You know, is everyone just supposed to go back to normal kind of deal and be like, oh, I'm just content with the scraps at the table here. I'm content with having a, you know, emergency meeting from the White House about the economy that is just fucking bullshit. Literally all of it. Are we content with that? While our people are just getting murdered left and right across the country? I'm not playing that game, man. I refuse to.
No, I mean, there is no reason why anyone should have to leave where they live, you know, especially if that's where their ancestors are from. I mean, it gets to the point where if you can't even defend yourself anymore, you know, there are places in this country that are going to allow you to defend yourself on, you know, if that unfortunate day ever comes. I hate saying that because, you know, like I said, there's a lot of people who live in cities. I mean, we have people on our you know, in the OGC whose families are, you know, 8th generation in a city, and, you know, you would never want them to leave. But and if you can't even pull a weapon and shoot somebody who's, you know, assaulting, you know, a young woman without worried about going to jail, I don't know that you can stay there anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, we're in the end game now, guys. Well, it's just, we can't have half measures. We can't. The half measures only embolden the enemy. This has just been proven to us at this point over the last several months, and it's only going to get worse. So it's either total victory or defeat. Those are the two options available to us. There's no middle ground. And the Trump administration needs to understand this and get this through their thick heads, regardless of what any of the boomer donor class thinks about. oh my God, the Donald Trump kills Americans. Oh my God, Donald Trump sent the Nazi National Guardsmen into our cities to institute law and order. Who fucking cares, man? Put the fear of God into these people. Our safety is most important above all else. And we aren't being protected. There's nothing more to say.
You can't have a heritage if you're dead.
Yep, exactly. Let's go through the super chats, Pete, and we'll get out of here. So, all right, starting at the top with our ever loyal Solid Snake 1964 for $10. He says, "Merry Christmas, gentlemen. In this time of strife, remember to spend time with family, drink some warm cider, and honor the birth of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ." Hear, hear. Having a prime rib for dinner like me and my family is just the cherry on top. Hope you all get something from Santa. Salute. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Solid Snake. You, sir, are a real American. And yes, everyone should be spending extra time with your family and your loved ones this year. You know, it's been interesting over the last couple of years how a number of our guys have reached out to me because, you know, every Father's Day and every Mother's Day, I just put out a very simple tweet, you know, call your mom, call your dad. And you'd be amazed, actually. I know a lot of people in our thing have, strained relationships with their parents and stuff, but I think it's just super important this time of year, you know, for everyone to have some kind of connection with family members. They're the only ones you've got. Any of your disagreements and strife can be put away if people put away, their pride and just suck it up a little bit. So, I hope everyone gets to spend Christmas with their families if possible. Christopher Burks sends us $2 and a salute. Thank you, sir. You are a real American. Let's see.
Real Americans.
Thank you. There we go. Real Americans. Yeah. B20 Shill sends us $1. Thank you very much. Every little bit counts. We appreciate it here. I love how it's clippy. His notification. Would you like $1? Yeah, I would like $1.
I know B20 Shell. He's a really cool dude. We've hung out.
Nice. We got Cringewalker, who's gone through like his 4th name change now. This is just this is ridiculous at this point. You know, pick one and stick with it, man. Jeez. Anyway, for $20 says, when the state abdicates its responsibilities, it's only inevitable citizens start filling them. Yes, this is obviously correct. Very true indeed. City Breakdancer Man, always one of my favorite names of people in the chat. Yeah, exactly. Merry Christmas to you all. Well, Merry Christmas to you, City Breakdancer Man. Thank you. Bolero 393 for $5. This guy's an OG. He's been around since the academic agent days. For $5 says, gross, what's happened to Australia? Used to be like 1950s California with funny accents and wildlife. Also, rip epic white man Steve Irwin. Man, Steve Irwin was such a hero of mine when I was growing up as a kid. Unbelievable. Very, very tragic death. But yes, it is horrible what has gone on in Australia as well with the rest of our countries. Again, we're all tackling the same problems. And while there's definitely some overlap in how to solve those issues, each of us are going to have to do it in our own way. But it is important to maintain contact with all of our friends abroad. So Sona Haster for $5 sends us a salute and says, OGC's policy against blackpilling is very important in these times. Keep your heads up and keep those important to you close. Absolutely. Very, very true. Very wise words coming from
Real
Sona
Americans.
Haster. And he too is a real American. Yes, indeed. Our good friend Melon for $5 says, Aussies are legendary shit posters. Much respect. Very true indeed. Seasider, our strongest soldier in the chat, sends $10 and a salute, as he does
Real
every
Americans.
week. He is a real American. You know what? That's what the wing of OGC headquarters one day is going to be called, the Seasider wing for real Americans. Bolero 393 again for $10 says, as to why white guys aren't thrilled about national service, in the words of Morgoth, it's like we know the institutions are against us. Yeah, very true. Absolutely true. Bolero also says for $5, to be fair, the Australian government would have prosecuted the Good Samaritan with more vigor than the co-conspirators. Yeah, that's obviously true. and something that is becoming more and more commonplace throughout the Anglosphere. Bolero393 again for $5. How could they leave the West? How else would they be able to make us conscious of our racism and anti-desertification? Yeah, exactly. Kyle Linskog sends us $10 and a salute.
Real Americans.
American. Damn right, he's a real American. Yeah. Our strongest woman in the chat, Dawn Browning, for 10 Australian bucks. Thank you very much. She says, oh, this is actually a super chat. It's not a super sticker. My goodness, I'm thrown off. Does Mitch believe that Harold Holt was pro-ending the white Australia policy, and was his body ever found after swimming at Sorrento? Well, I know nothing about this, but I'm sure that some Australians have some theories about this one.
Maybe you can reach out. Maybe we can reach out to Mitch and read the answer next week, or not next week, but the following week.
Yeah, we will ask. Okay. Bolero393 once again for $10. Millennial Woes, which by the way, Millennial is going on right now. Many great guests and are having some fantastic interviews, including some of our friends.
The Jeff Younger one is
it's a must listen to.
Off the charts.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that one's been my favorite thus far for sure. That one is a must listen to for our guys. But our own Cringe Walker was on just last night, so people can look at that. And I think Dave the Distributist is coming up, and the American Banquet will be coming up, and plenty of OGC guys will be on that one. So if you guys aren't watching Millennial, you definitely should be. But anyway, carrying on with the super chat. Bolero393 says Millennial Woes, paraphrased on many issues such as Indians defining what an American is. So much of modern discourse is leftists pretending not to understand us, which makes discourse impossible. That, you know what?
No, we're not doing that. You're getting called a slur.
Thank you, Sam. That's up there for video of the year. But I will say this: Woes' tweet is, I think, the top candidate this year for tweet of the year. That is was some excellent stuff for sure. It's just so perfect. Yeah, that's exactly why discourse with the left is impossible. They just literally pretend not to know, like the sky is blue. It's just a tactic used to distract you and prevent you from doing real work. So block and move on. All right. Field Marshal Dawn Browning, again, this time she does send us a super sticker. Thank you very much, Dawn. She says, it's a trio of hippo faces emerging in sequence from the water. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. Pete Budapest for $5 says, I'm all about barefooting and grounding for health and fitness, but not you, Vivek. Your shoes stay on. My goodness. Ugh. Just the worst.
Remember that interview he did where he didn't have any shoes on?
Again, ordeal of civility, man.
Disgusting animal.
Yeah. Pete Budapest again for $10. The good news is the discourse and vibes have totally shifted in our favor. I listened to Ben Shapiro give a speech today. Literally nobody under the age of 90 identifies with his crap anymore. Yeah, I believe it. I couldn't even imagine what shit he's spewing these days. But I do hope the Daily Wire is out millions of dollars. That I do hope for. So, okay. Pete Budapest again. The problem is a lot of beneficiaries of DEI are of a demographic that doesn't understand cause and effect, have high time preference, and next to no agency. You just have to take it back. That's a very good point. All excellent points. He again sends us $5. Pete Budapest says, sadly, she was the wrong race, wrong religion, so the GOP can't be bothered. She probably never even observed Shabbat dinners. Oh, brutal, but also likely true.
Every single time.
Yep. Okay. Bolero393 again. For $10. Gorgeous white girl falls at Brown University. Leftist cover for the guilty. Sleepy Cash Patel thinks Brown University is a Poo Valhalla, and he'll see her there later. He has the watch. It's just so horrible. Just like, again, layup. Pitch right down the middle.
Didn't shitskin Bongino step down yesterday or something?
How would we even know he's gone? He hasn't fucking done anything. You know?
Thank you. Yeah, it's I'm gonna get in there. It's like, yeah, let's get that podcaster in there to, the guy who is going to be completely friggin' blackmailed by Israel, or it's unbelievable, man. It's like, what was he supposed to be, like, former Secret Service? Does anybody even know if that's true? It's just a bunch of horse shit. I mean,
it might be like that case where Ted Nugent, I don't know if you're aware of this, Pete, but Ted Nugent is actually an FBI agent, but he got it like as a gift, and all he has to do is like repeat the training like every single year, like firearms, basically. So he keeps his FBI agent credentials, and he basically got it to weasel around the gun restrictions when he was traveling on tour. So he could like take his guns with him when he was on tour over various countries and states, because at the time the like the UK and stuff allowed like FBI agents to carry their guns like in the UK and everything. So maybe it was one of those things.
Oh, God.
He got it in name only.
I mean, I have a feeling because he was huge on Rumble that was like a patronage thing by the guys who own Rumble. It just seems like it had to have been, because I mean, really, who's watching? Who's his audience?
Who knows? Maybe it's
who's watching
his audience.
Yeah, but we're talking about boomers on Rumble. I ain't buying it.
Yep. Me neither. All right, here we got Ski Bum 220, big super chatter of the night, $100. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate it. Merry Christmas to all Americans, Aussies, and all of our people. My prayers are with everyone who lost someone to immigrant violence. Salute the OGC. Well, thank you very much, Ski Bum. You indeed are a real American. Thank you. Moving on to another guy who's got a fantastic name in the chat. Imagine my lack of shekel for $10. I dream of a day when we no longer have to press 1 for English. Ugh, exactly. Okay. Moving on to Bolero 393 again. Can the Trump administration even protect itself? Can he protect us? Does he have the will left to try? Yeah, really. Serious question. I mean, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago when like Pete Hegseth is just goading on the left, right? And it's like, dude, they're literally going to throw you in prison when you come back. Stop fucking around. Moving on. Let's see. Jermoski Kek, or Jermuskek, whatever, for $10. Just got here after work. Trump has had an even worse week this week than when he bombed Iran. I don't know if it was that bad, but it's certainly not been good.
I don't know. This has been a pretty bad week. I mean, I don't know. That might just be a draw.
Yeah, maybe. Ruthless Sound Studios for $10. God bless. Friendship will take us further than we think. Ride the lightning. Here. No, I'm not Grim from Red Hood for $2. Not much this week, but y'all deserve something. Salute. Well, thank you very much, sir. You're a real American. Yes. Machiavelli sucks to go. He switched it back. Machiavelli sucks to go for $5. Says love 1933. Yeah. Let's see. Jermuskek for another $10. Make sure we keep our delivery drivers in your prayers this Christmas. They have to share the street with CDL drivers. Yep. Be careful.
So bad.
Indeed.
I mean, I just drove to Florida and back, and I don't know who these people are, but just want to stay as far away from them as possible.
Yeah, you got to be careful on those roads, everyone. Keep a watchful eye. Let's see. We've got Airmeg Discourse, favorite of ours in the chat, for $10 says, Merry Christmas to my fellow Americans. Well, Merry Christmas to you, sir. And then we got Volpes Persona for $10 says, Merry Christmas to all of our friends and winter watchers. Yes, indeed. Machiavelli sucks to go again for $5. I'm going to watch Victory in the West after the stream to lift my morale. There you go. I would recommend anybody else if you need a morale booster. Everyone go watch Metamorphosis from the Murdoch guys. That is always a good morale booster as well. Let's see. Go to Jerem Keck for $5. Thank you, Pete and RedHawk, for your content. Been watching the Inquisition episodes with Astral. Yeah, those are great. Everyone should be watching those.
Thank you.
And Pete Budapest again for $5. The GOP put the nation through a struggle session throughout 2024 because a certain demographic was annoyed by protesters on Ivy League campuses. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I hope everyone in their chat has participated in their Shabbat dinners this Christmas season. Yeah, so that's how you know you're a real American, right? Unbelievable. And then our final super chat for the evening is from No, I'm Not Grim from Red Hood for $2. He says, remember Morgoth's words, life is cheap to them. Very, very true.
Yep.
Alrighty. That is us all caught up on the super chats this evening. Some final announcements for everyone is that, of course, because 1 week from today is Christmas, so there will be no Pony Express on Christmas. There will also be no Pony Express a week after that because it is New Year's Day, and so we will not be having Pony Express that day either. But what we will have is next Monday is going to be the OGC Christmas Party stream. So in lieu of having American Spirits and Chapter House next week, it will be the OGC Christmas Party. So everyone come around for that. It's going to be a great time. We're going to have tons of people in here. People will come and go as they like. We'll be recapping what happened in 2025 and what we are looking for into 2026. So we hope to see everybody next week for the OGC Christmas Party. We hope all of you will come to join us. And we've got one super chat in the last minute here from Jerem Muskek for $5. Merry Christmas, Patriots. Christ is King. Absolutely. Christ is King.
Amen.
Amen to that. We will see all of you guys on Monday. But first, Pete, what do you have to promote?
Drop the second episode in the series with Thomas on the 30 Years War tonight. So if you're looking for something to listen to, go check it out.
Alrighty, go check that out. Pete is always putting out amazing stuff. For myself, I made an appearance yesterday on Timeline Earth for the 12 Days of Birdmas. So if you guys want to check that out, the TLE guys are always putting out some great stuff over there. Have a special way of making you laugh more than anybody else in our entire scene. So definitely,
I heard it when I was driving yesterday. It was a good episode.
Yeah, and it's always a pleasure to talk to Bird. He's a good dude. So head on over to.
I had dinner with him a couple of nights ago.
Guys, I still have yet to do that. I got to do that. We must meet in Meet Space, Bird. We got to make it happen. I mean, it only makes sense, right? I mean, we're two fellow avians, we're just made for each other. So, alrighty, we'll be back here on Monday for the OGC Christmas Party. In the meantime, everyone have a fantastic weekend.
When I pass on my good genes to my sons, they're going to join